Chapter 7 Print Culture and Modern World. Q.3 What did the spread of print culture in the 19th century India mean to A. Women, B. The poor, C. Reformers, and A. Children. I. As primary education became compulsory from the late 19th century, children became an important category of readers. E. Production of school textbooks became critical for the publishing industry. E. A children's press, devoted to literature for children alone, was set up in France in 1857. This press published new works as well as old fairy tales and folk tales. IV. The Grimm brothers in Germany spent years compiling traditional folk tales gathered from peasants. V. Anything that was considered unsuitable for children or would appear vulgar to the elites was not included in the published version. Rural folk tales thus acquired a new form. In this way, print recorded old tales, but also changed them. B. Women. I. Women as readers. Lives and feelings of women began to be written in intense ways. So women became important as readers. Penny magazines were especially meant for women, as were manuals teaching proper behavior and housekeeping. E. Women as writers. Many women novelists like Jane Austen, Bronte sisters, George Eliot wrote about women. Novels and other journals began exploring the world of women, their emotions, identities, their experiences and problems. The writings of women became important in defining a new type of woman, a person with will, strength of personality, determination and the power to think. E. Novels and books on women. As the readership of women was increasing, publishers started producing novels and journals for women. Many journals began carrying writings by women, and explained why women should be educated. C. Workers. I. Lending libraries. Lending libraries had been in existence from the 17th century onwards. In the 19th century, lending libraries in England became instruments for educating the white-collar workers, artisans and lower middle-class people. E. Autobiographies. Sometimes, self-educated working-class people wrote for themselves. After the working day was gradually shortened from the mid-19th century, workers had some time for self-improvement and self-expression. They wrote political tracts and autobiographies in large numbers. E. Novels on the lives of the workers. In the 19th century, Europe entered the industrial age. Factories came up, profits increased and the economy grew. But at the same time, workers faced problems of unemployment, low wages, poor working conditions. Many novelists such as Charles Dickens and Thomas Hardy wrote about the adverse impact of industrialization on the lives of workers. B. I. Public libraries. The print reached to the poor in the 19th century. Publishers started producing small and cheap books. These books were sold at crossroads. Public libraries were set up by the Christian missionaries and the rich people. E. Highlighting the issue of class discrimination. From the late 19th century, many writers started writing about the issue of class distinction. I. Jyotiba Phule was a social reformer. He wrote about the poor condition of low caste. In his book Gulamgiri, 1871, he wrote about the injustices of the caste system. E. In the 20th century, B.R. Ambedkar also wrote powerfully against the caste system. He also wrote against untouchability. E. V. Ramaswamy Naikar, also known as Periyar, too wrote about the caste system prevailing in Madras, Chennai. The writings of these writers were read by people all over India. Local protest movements and sects also created a lot of popular journals and tracts criticizing ancient scriptures with a view to creating new and just future. IV. Poor workers and the print. Workers in factories were too overworked, and thus, lacked the education to write about their expectations and experiences. But Kashibaba, a Kanpur mill worker, wrote and published Chahote Aur Bade Ka Sawal in 1938 to depict the links between caste and class exploitation. The poems of another Kanpur mill worker, who wrote under the name of Sudarshan Chakra between 1935 and 1955, were brought together and published in a collection called Sachi Kavitayain. By the 1930s, Bengaluru cotton mill workers set up libraries to educate themselves. By doing so, they were following the example of Bombay, Mumbai workers. These libraries were sponsored by social reformers who tried to restrict excessive drinking among the poor, to bring literacy and, sometimes, to propagate the message of nationalism. See reformers. From the early 19th century there were intense debates around religious issues. Different groups differed on interpretations of the beliefs of different religions. Criticism and campaigns were going on. The coming of print made a lot of difference as mentioned below. 1. The coming of print culture meant that the reformers could now spread their ideas more quickly among the masses. 2. The debates on existing practices were printed in newspapers and journals. 3. A large number of people could now participate in debates relating to religious and social reforms. 4. New ideas emerged through these debates about widow immolation, monotheism, Brahmanical priesthood and idolatry. 5. Different ideas were printed in the everyday spoken language of ordinary people. For example, Raja Ram Mohan Roy published the Sambad Kaumudi from 1821 to spread his ideas. 6. The reformers used the print culture to reach the masses. 7. In addition to this, social reformers used the print culture to restrict excessive drinking among workers to spread literacy. 8. Among Muslims, the ulama used cheap lithographic presses, published Persian and Urdu translations of holy scriptures, and printed religious newspapers and tracts. The meanings of Islamic doctrines were explained. 9. Among Hindus, 2. Print encouraged the reading of religious texts, especially in the vernacular languages. The first printed edition of the Ram Charitmanas of Tulsidas came out from Calcutta in 1810. 10. By the mid-19th century, cheap lithographic editions flooded North Indian markets. From the 1880s the Naval Kishore Press at Lucknow and the Sri Venkateshwar Press in Bombay published numerous religious texts in vernaculars. These texts reached a large number of people encouraging debates, discussions on various issues. Please like and subscribe my channel.